Hello everyone. In this video I'd like to make a review on the work that we did in the class. We did a storyboard and I would like to show you how to make it a little bit more clear and interesting. So first I would like to say is that you need to show who exactly is talking. So how do you do that? You need to show it with open mouth, and if you write down something underneath the board, we will understand that he's talking. Very simple characters that it's enough for you to manipulate them and see how different kind of locations of the character might work, and so you can try different examples, different variants, and that way you can transfer it to a high definition storyboard. It's a lot easier to transfer it to a high definition storyboard because you can add more details. You also need to simplify the expressions. So this is the open, the T, the S, O, A, and the closed mouth. But this is what I do, this is how I draw. You can of course stylize it your own way, but it's important that you keep it simple and not too detailed. You want to complete it as fast as possible because you might spend a lot of time on storyboard, so you need to know for sure that it's going to work. Next thing is that it's almost impossible to understand what the dialogue is about through just watching this storyboard, so it is important to show visually what it's about. What's the story about? Even though it's just a simple dialogue, you need to show visually something. Is this guy hiding his hand in his pants because he's hiding something like a gun or whatever? You need to visually make it more interesting and add a punchline to the story. Another important moment is to simplify the characters, not just the mouth expression. You need to not draw the realism in your storyboards, especially in your first stages. You want to keep it simple. Start with the simple shapes. So start with a circle, and if it's a male face, put a box. If it's a female face, put a triangle as a chain. And don't draw as little strokes. Try to draw as one stroke at a time. So we're going to talk about it as well in design of characters. But at this stage, it's also good for you to know that you can simplify it, use overall shapes. And then when you go into a more detailed version, you can of course detail the characters, add clothes and accessories to the character. But on this stage of the storyboard, just keep it simple with the shapes. Another thing is that you need to frame the character. In this example, as you can see, the character is quite on top, so we need to pull him down and leave a little bit of space on top. Why? Because when you put the character closer to the edge, it looks like he's hitting the top border and it doesn't look balanced. We need to keep it. We need to keep the horizon level. And instead of here, for example, there are a lot of free space and it's not occupied, and on top there is no space. So, for example, we need to somehow occupy the space, but it's still important not to. In this example, the artist didn't understand what's the story about, so he started out drawing many different things, and it seems like a huge story, but it's almost impossible to show it in just 5 shots. And remember that it's an 11-second dialogue, and you just have to keep it simple. In terms of how it's drawn, the same problems like in previous examples. Characters are hitting the edge, it's not framed correctly. Characters look at the camera even though they are talking to each other, which is quite strange, so this is how you approach drawing it. If a character is looking away from the camera, we shade him in, so it seems like the camera is looking at his back, and with the arrow we show where he's looking at. And I would draw her a little bit lower because it looks boring when characters are on the same level. It doesn't tell anything interesting. So when there's a difference, when there's sort of like a perspective, it looks more dynamic, more interesting. I really like the design of the characters, the simplicity, the line, the flow of the line. Just like I showed, you don't draw with a jagged line like this. You draw with a one stroke or continuous stroke that amplifies the dynamics of the image. And I wouldn't draw this clouds. I would just put a text underneath the board, and then we understand who's talking if the mouth is open. And in this shot, I thought that the camera should be moving, and the camera is following the guy who is saying, is everything okay, with a question mark. So I thought that maybe it would be interesting to show who is powerful and who is submissive. So you level them on a different height. One is higher and another one is lower. That makes it look interesting and consistent with the second shot. So you want to keep the consistency throughout. That's why I put him higher. And the second shot, I thought that you can also crop the character and not show the full body, so that he's not hitting the top edge. But of course you can do that. In this example it's fine, but this is my choice. I thought that looks better. In this shot, because he's pushing on the other character, and if you want to make it more powerful, you would like to remove the distance that is in the back. You want to visually show that the guy is losing his space because the other guy is moving on him, and it seems like he's angry at him or something. That's a little bit strange. I didn't understand what's happening, so I didn't get what's the story about. In this example, even though it's a simple dialogue, you need to show emotions of the characters. It's an establishing shot, and it seems like you're showing the town. And because it's an establishing shot, usually, because we're kind of moving into the room in the next shot, we want to show it visually with the camera moving in. And we do this with arrows. We show with the box where we're moving and the arrows as well. And because the other guy who is talking on the next shot, he's in the top left quadrant in the box, we want to show it the same thing. We want to lead our audience eye to that part, so that way we need to show, we need to either make a window bright in that part, or we want to make a shadow that leads to that place. Somehow we need to lead the eye of the audience to that particular spot that where the character in the next shot is appearing, so that it doesn't go back and forth finding where the focal point, where the important information is. And the next shot is a wide shot, and the second shot, because it's a wide shot, we still kind of want to continue zooming in. And the next shot, it seems like you are drawing in perspective, but you did the perspective the wrong way, because it seems like a Dutch angle, even though I don't think you intended it. Dutch angle is when you rotate the camera and the horizon gets rotated and gets to look like a diagonal line, and it makes it more dynamic, but in this shot I think we don't need it. You also need to plan the dialogue, because there are two guys talking, and if the camera is looking like this, and it seems like logically the next camera is going to look like this, but we moved our camera here, and it seems like it's inconsistent. It looks like you want to disorient the audience, but if you don't want to do that, then you want to keep consistent, you want to keep these rules. So even if you just simply flip the image horizontally, you will see how it's going to look like, how it's supposed to look like in the next shot. But this is what you drew. This looks a little bit strange. So in the next shot, I like the story. I like two characters talking to each other, and the important lesson here is that you need framing. You want to frame the characters, and we want to leave important information inside and not important outside. The important information is the guy is talking. There's some droplets falling, and the other guy is listening. So we want to crop it as much as possible to just keep the important information left. That's why I cropped it out like this. I also did amplify the character design, so I wanted to think about what are those two characters are, their characteristics. Like this, one guy is like a pirate or whatever, and another guy is nerd or like a stupid guy, a very silly guy. And in this shot, I drew the character quite huge. That makes it dominant, and there's another framing inside framing. So this second character is like frame the space, leaving a smaller part to the other character. That makes it powerful. And in the next shot, he's saying good, and then he says, "Then so I guess you're not worried about this." And so the other character is realize that something wrong. Then we can also zoom out from this shot. That makes it leaked to the previous shot, so that audience understand that those droplets are inside a water bottle. We can also show it with just the sound. Audience might understand it, might link it because of the sound. You also need to use those fields for the notes. But it seems like I didn't understand the location of each character. So you need to draw a plan and plan out the shots if it's not traditional. So this is how the character is looking at the characters. We see another character is coming behind, and the next shot, it seems like the camera is going to be here or there. It's hard to tell which one is better. In this shot, it seems like he is grabbing him by the shoulder, but in the next shot we don't see it, so I get confused because of that. And because the guy is looking to the left, you want to show it from the back. It's also nice to use rule of thirds for a balanced shot. You want to move the guy to the right a little bit, and the other guy being on the left, so that it keeps consistent. It seems like in this shot it was shown right, because this guy is approaching him from the back, but I thought actually because of the second shot that he's approaching him from the front, so that's why I was confused. So you need to fix the second shot so the audience can understand the location of the characters. Here I also drew eyes of the character because I wanted to show the direction where the audience should look at, but it's not that important because of the framing, the audience will probably understand. And the last reaction, I thought maybe it should be worried or surprised instead of angry, although you might have another story in your mind, but you have to kind of show it, maybe putting some notes underneath so that we can understand what he's feeling, or if it's impossible to show, you're also at the zoom in of the camera because the other guy is just left, The important focus is the guy who is surprised or who is angry. But here is strange who is talking and who is not in the frame, and we want to show it with the movement who is approaching the frame. We need to show the movement of the characters, who is approaching and who is standing already, so that we understand. And this is how I thought it might look. And there is also a frame where we show the driver controlling his emotion, and at the end he cannot control, so starts pounding in the car, and the car is also jumping up and down. This might be interesting. Here in the shot, the characters are looking at the camera, but you shaded up the other character. It seems like he turned to him. So in order to fix it, I thought maybe using the more exaggerated perspective, like I did. Maybe I stylistic choice. I didn't understand what's exactly happening in this story, but I'll talk about the remarks. So first thing is, usually in the movie you could notice that the characters are not locked dead to the center unless he's in power. Usually you just put him on like in a rule of thirds on the sides. In the second shot you keep it consistent and keep the other character shaded on the left and the guy on the right. And here's also you would amplify the visually by moving the camera in, almost like a POV, point of view of the guy who's moving, so that might amplify the emotions and make it interesting, almost like we are following him. So here there are several moments. First the character is standing on the right, and then he's standing on the left, which is strange. But there's also a problem with characters looking at the camera, so you want character to look in perspective at each other. So because he's on the left, we need to flip this image to make him on the right. So keep it consistent. And now I'm just using the perspective to show them looking at each other instead of at the camera. Now this character is falling on the right, so you need to show it with the arrows, as well as make him fall on the right. So you want to show with the next shot where he is laying down. So you want to continue the movement from the previous shot so that the audience understand who is falling down on the floor. Also, it looks more correct. Now the next shot with the guy locked dead in the center, it's also strange why you showed. You want to use an amplified camera upshot. In this case, that makes it like a surprise, like a reaction to the monster, which makes it more interesting. And you can even make a shadow on top of him, growing, and the camera moving up, almost like you are a monster, like the audience is a monster. And then the next shot, we are that guy, and the guy is very small, so we show him lower right side, and the character is huge, so we show it with a perspective like this, with a down shot. In this example, I didn't understand exactly what the story was about, but that's just because I was confused with the several boards. So in this one, you also can see that it's important to frame the moments. You show everything in each shot, but you need to keep certain information visible and one at a time, so that the audience is not confused or overblown with the information. So you want to show, for example, how the character is running, jumping on the chair, and then he's moving from left to right, and the camera is following him. And then in the next shot, we can show the guy reading a book. Even though I thought that he's supposed to kind of find what the sounds are, so he might be standing and searching for the sounds. But if you want him reading, that's fine. I would frame as well the it's like a typical dialogue in this case. And in this one, it looks a little bit strange because the perspective is wrong. It seems like we are looking at the window from below. We're supposed to see the sky, but we see the guy. So we might show it not from the window perspective, but rather separately, showing the guy surprised, kicking the drum, and then going to the monster crashing through the border, crashing through the wall. Okay, that's it. Thank you for listening. Bye.